Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Teixeira. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Tahoe Chamber. Welcome to our 2023 State of the South Shore program. We're pleased to welcome you all here and those of you who are on Zoom. And we have a great panel for us this evening with lots of really good information. It's a unique opportunity because you typically go to a city council meeting or a board of supervisors meeting or a TRPA or a South Tahoe PUD meeting, and you hear what's going on with that particular organization. You don't really get that many chances to hear integrated conversations amongst a variety of our local jurisdictions. We're particularly glad to have South Tahoe PUD here tonight and Shelly Thomsen. So our other panelists, of course, Joe Irvin, City Manager, City of South Lake Tahoe. Cindy Gustafson. Cindy's a Placer County District 5 Supervisor. She's the current chair of the TRPA Governing Board. Also Brooke, Laine, District 5 Supervisor, El Dorado County. And Shelly Thomsen with South Tahoe PUD, the Director of Public and Community Relations. Also with us tonight, of course, is Mike Glover, our Chamber CEO, and our President of the Board, Mr. Gerdeman, and Christina Davies of our staff as well. We want to thank Brandy Brown and the great team at Tahoe Production House for our production facilities and recording this evening. So, without further ado, I will step this way and we'll get the program underway. As we conclude with the presentations, you will have an opportunity to write down questions, which Mike or I will address to the appropriate member of our panel. And the cards are back between the water coolers there with some pens, and you can write anytime during the program, write a question, bring it up, and we will ask it for you. So appreciate that opportunity, and again, thank you to our panelists. So we're going to start out this evening with our El Dorado County District 5 Supervisor, Brooke Laine. Congratulations again on a hard-fought campaign, and I know that you've been extremely busy just over the first couple of months of the new term. So Brooke and each of our panelists will have a PowerPoint to share some information, and then we'll, again, hold your questions. Bring them up anytime, but we'll ask them at the end of all four. So welcome, Supervisor Laine.
Thank you. I'm happy to kick this off and want all of you to know that our new logo, our new slogan is "Come to El Dorado County where you can buy pot, but the potholes are free." Just saying. The city manager, Joe Irvin, and I spoke today, and we were talking about possibly coordinating our presentations, and we decided that probably wasn't going to work, so we coordinated our outfits instead. So good job. All right, let's get started. I first wanted to share with everybody that we have an interim chief administrative officer. Her name is Tiffany Schmidt. She has taken the place of our beloved Don Ashton. For those of you who may have known him, he served as the CEO for 7 years and has since retired. Tiffany is a lifelong resident of El Dorado County. She went to school at Sac State, served a little bit of time in the state of California in Sacramento, but quickly returned to her roots in El Dorado County, and it's been really fun and an amazing experience working with her. She's been with the county now for 14 years, so she easily slid into that position, and we're happy to have her. It's kind of a trial for all of us. It's an opportunity for Tiffany to see if this is a position she would like to continue to pursue, and it's an opportunity for the board to determine if we believe that she's the right fit. Tiffany, I will mention, is very protective of her private life, as all of us who work in government really should be, and she rides horses and she competes. And so she really wanted to make sure that she had the opportunity to continue doing what she loves, and she didn't want the job to take over her life. So we're in a little testing period right now. I wanted to bring to your attention a project that doesn't involve the basin at all and is really a West Shore, West Slope issue. But it was so amazing and astonishing all at the same time that I wanted to just mention it. There is a project called Project Frontier, and it was slated to be a warehouse in El Dorado Hills within El Dorado County, and it was projected to be a 4.4 million square foot operation. As you can imagine, the people in El Dorado Hills lost their cookies. They organized quickly, they were well funded, and they started an immediate campaign as soon as this became public this was not something that they wanted in their neighborhood, and this project has since rescinded their request for a permit. So perhaps bullet dodged. The county hadn't taken a position on this project at all. Of course, they came in with, dollar tags hanging in your face saying, we're going to produce $23 million in sales tax, and those are all good things, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure we're doing right by our residents and by our economy and balancing those two. And I don't know that this project would have survived had it continued on or not, but we'll never know because it did not continue on. I do want to talk to you a little bit about the budget for El Dorado County. It comes in at about $950 million annually, of which a little bit more than half of that is general fund at the tune of $428 million. General fund revenues are made up by our property taxes, sales taxes, transient occupancy tax, franchise fees, and other discretionary funds. And I thought this was kind of a fun slide because it shows me. Is the slideshow not working? Is it not working? Well, I don't have, okay, I just realized it's not working. Okay. It's okay. Okay.
I think the clickers on it,
No, they're working. It's not working back there. Okay, there's Tiffany's slide. Good. Next. Okay, there we go. This is the slide we were supposed to be on. Not me. So this is a great depiction because it shows a dollar bill, and it shows broken down kind of who gets what with regards to property taxes. And you can see that the schools get the lion's share at about 41%. That's K through 12, community colleges, and the Office of Education. Special districts and the counties get a little under 25% each. So think about that as about a quarter on every dollar. And the cities, unfortunately, get about a nickel of every dollar. I apologize for that. Had nothing to do with it. Okay, next, I would like to talk about facilities, specifically up here in the basin with regards to El Dorado County. And I wanted to remind you that the county purchased the Barton campus at the Y for $7.4 million. And we're in the middle of doing a $2.6 million remodel on that property. And as the building, we're doing the first building now, as that building becomes available, we will start moving county services onto that campus with the hopes that it'll be like one-stop shopping. You really can go there for almost all your needs. We're going to continue to keep mental health kind of behind the Shell gas station in town. That'll stay there, but HHSA, which is Health and Human Services, those will go to this campus. The planning department will be there, the Department of Transportation, Development Services, and others as we have room for. The interesting thing about this campus is there's four buildings on this campus, and one is pretty funky in that it has like a bathroom pretty much in every unit. So we don't know if it was used for housing in the past or what the deal was, but the county's looking at this as a possible employee housing facility as well that would help with when we have to bring people up to help with snow removal and they need a place to stay. So we're hopeful about that. The other big project here in the basin is renovation of the juvenile hall. We received a $9.6 million grant to regenerate that, and so that will be coming on board soon. Did you know about that? Okay.
It's exciting.
You know everything. I wasn't in the loop. Furthermore, we are doing a big project with the Department of Transportation. We had a building collapse during this phenomenal snowy winter. Fortunately, it was already on the capital improvement list, so that's a $5 million building that'll be new for the Department of Transportation, and that'll be built this summer. Furthermore, we're doing some work at the jail, which is about $1.9 million, and some work at Johnson Center and Sandy Way to the tune of about $1 million. So the county is pumping in quite a bit of revenue into their facilities up here just in the basin, so that I wasn't even mentioning, all the things that they're doing on the other slope. I want to talk about the Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resilience. This office was created in July of 2022, and as we know, wildfires are just going to continue in frequency and intensity. This office was put together following the Caldor fire in August of 21. El Dorado County Board of Supervisors directed the Chief Administrative Office to form a vegetation management and wildfire resiliency group to collaborate on lessons learned, define funding systems, and initiate a robust community-based wildfire resiliency and vegetation management program that would accelerate current efforts in the county on both public and private lands. That group is governed by the Tahoe Fire and Fuels team. They're part of that. El Dorado County, the fire chiefs and the safe councils, as well as CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service. One of their tasks is to put together an annual work plan. And so this year for 2023, just as an example, with regards to risk assessment, they're going to conduct risk assessment based on values and assets at risk, including critical infrastructure, historical buildings, and structural densities. And then they will allow for prioritization of those by assigning ranking, creating various values and risks. They also have a defensible space program, and they are going to be contracting with both El Dorado Hills Fire and Lake Valley Fire Districts, so Lake Valley will oversee that program up here in the basin. Finally, I just want to mention briefly the vacation home rentals, which many of you may have been following in the news, but it was the biggest complaint that I heard during my time running for office from people in the unincorporated part of the county is the effect of the city having banned VHRs. It really pushed into the county. It took a while to get some controls. There is a cap currently, and there is a radius, and those things are helping. But to the residents that are surrounded by them that were grandfathered in, it's not helped soon enough. So we're reinvigorating the talk around this concept. We're going to be putting together a 13 to 15 member advisory council that will work directly with me. And the idea is that we're going to look at the ordinance and see where can we make some adjustments that make life easier for everybody. Certainly enforcement is the big elephant in the middle of the room, because really El Dorado County would admit that they don't have the resources to do a good job. And so maybe this program, the VHR program, some of the transient occupancy tax that's collected and other fees as a result of that program will be put back into the program in the form of enforcement. So I don't want to say too much more about that, because I know that we all know VHRs inside and out, up and down. Lastly, I just want to mention the Measure S Citizens Oversight Committee. Recall that in the unincorporated part of the county, we agreed to up our transient occupancy tax from 10% to 14% on the condition that the additional 4% would be spent up here in the basin on road maintenance and snow removal only. And so we created an oversight committee with the following 5 people. They will work with the Department of Transportation to make sure not only will that additional 4% be spent on those 2 items, but that we don't get the shell game with the county where they take money away from us because we're getting this 4%. So we end up really at the same place we started with no additional new funding. So that's those are their two main tasks. And I will conclude it right there and turn it over to our city manager or back to Steve.
Thank you, Brooke. Appreciate it. Let's have a hand for our 5th District Supervisor, El Dorado County. And looking dapper in his matching outfit, our city manager, Joe Irvin, who I know was up late last night because the council meeting went till 10 p.m., but still fresh as a daisy. So welcome, Joe. Glad you're with us.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'm happy to be here and join with the panelists who get the honor to present the State of the South Shore, which is a really special event for all of us. I'll just get my clicker going here. Sorry. Yep. That's okay, but while that's getting, oh, good. Oh,
That's the end of mine.
that's Miss Laine's.
That's mine. Yep.
There we go. Thank you. Brandy, sorry. All right, next slide, please. So, for all of you who don't know, the City of South Lake Tahoe is managed by me, the city manager, but the policy and vision and budget is all set by our city council. We have Mayor Cregan, who is sorry she can't be here tonight, but I feel honored to fill in her space. Mayor Pro Tem Cody Bass, and council members Tamara Wallace, John Friedrich, and Scott Robbins. They adopt our budget, set our vision, make our priorities, and me and our 207 other employees implement that. We have a $134 million all funds budget, a general fund budget of $58 million, a reserve fund of $14.5 million, and like I said, that's done with 208 employees. That includes fire service, police service, parks and recreation, snowplow, road rehabilitation, planning and building, zoning, permitting, all of those lines of business, as I like to say. And we have really dedicated staff who help us do a great job providing service to our public. Next slide, please. I always find it interesting to take a look at Tahoe's community and what happened here. In the 1950s, Dwight Eisenhower was building interstate highway systems all throughout the country. And we were not buffered from that. And shortly after that, everyone started to have the opportunity to just get in their own car and go drive to these beautiful places that we're lucky enough to call home. The 1960 Olympics took place in Palisades, and that caused the community here in the South Shore to really pull together 4 neighborhood communities and say, we want to incorporate, we want to be a city, and that took place on November 30th, 1965. Shortly after the new city council was elected, the city embarked on building recreation amenities. Our current rec center that's operational was built in the 70s. It's time to be revamped. We're working on that. I'll get into that in a little bit more. That also was an era of motel and hotel development along US 50, and the Tahoe Keys started its growth and development phase. Then we move into the 1980s. The redevelopment era popped up for the state of California. The city was not shy to jump in on that and take advantage of that tax increment financing tool and utilize some very good methods to build better infrastructure and plan for the future in South Lake Tahoe, which really kind of just bubbled up from the Olympics coming and falling in our neighborhood, if you will. The 1990s, to much credit, the TRPA and other partners really embarked on this environmental improvement program, and the city and other partners jumped in and said, let's invest in taking care of this beautiful lake. Let's invest in stormwater and trail infrastructure and all the things that make it special. In the 2000s, we started seeing state line redevelopment. I lived here in the year 2000, from 2000 to 2003. I remember when there was no Heavenly Village and no gondola, but now you go down there and it's quite special. And the trails, I used to live here without a car, and I'd try to walk around. There was no sidewalks, there was no trails, but now it's better. And 20 years later, I ride my bike around town, and it's nice to have that trail network. What we're working on now, we're not doing alone. There's affordable housing issues. We all know that. The City Council is currently embarking on an analysis of funding options that can help us have some local money to build better housing infrastructure. Economic development, we hear it a lot that we want to broaden our basket of what kind of business and jobs we have, because we are very much tourist driven dependent. I think we'll always have the large share there, but finding niche industry is something the city's interested in doing, and we're sending out an RFP soon on a public-private partnership for broadband. So we're trying to build infrastructure that can support remote work and niche industries that might be attractive for those visitors who want to come to live in South Lake. Climate change, our city council's made very aggressive goals related to climate change, and we are investing in that. It takes some time. One of the hiccups that we're trying to work through is our utility provider. They have different tariff rules and requirements, and we need to work with them to get some changes to what the CPUC requires of them. But bottom line is we're looking to electrify transit. We're looking to find ways to generate solar, store it on site, create small microgrids at some of the city's facilities, which in the end will reduce our cost of monthly utility bills and be better for the environment. Transit's a big one. The city is right now in the middle of a transit study where we're working with VIA consultants to look at what it would cost to provide microtransit on-demand service throughout the city and a main line, a 20-minute headway from State Line to the Y. This is something that's coming to City Council in the next month. We have set up a South Shore Transit Subcommittee. Ms. Laine is serving on that with our Mayor Pro Tem and my office. Lindsay Baker, our Assistant City Manager, and myself are supporting that. So stay tuned. I think for the first time in a while, the city's really rolled up their sleeves and is really investing in trying to make that better and be a regional partner with the TTD and TART and making sure it's a connected system. And community for all. So we want to have inclusion. We want people to feel comfortable to come to City Council. We want them to feel comfortable to come to my office and ask questions and get the answers they need to things that they're worried about. Next slide, please. So the last 18 months or so, I just highlighted some achievements here. We started both parking ambassador program and a park ranger ambassador program. These are to manage our parking facilities. These are to manage high visitor locations such as Lakeview Commons, Regan Beach, Timber Cove Beach right out here, where we employ high school youth, Lake Tahoe Community College youth. We're working in partnership with the school district. We really appreciate that partnership and getting these kids the opportunity to get into public service, which maybe one day they could be standing here and be the city manager of South Lake Tahoe. That's my goal with that program. The city also banned plastic bottles, water bottles. April of 2024, the commercial ban will go into effect. This is something the city had prioritized for quite some years. We created our new Arts, Culture, and Tourism Commission in an effort to give a voice to locals to say what kind of local art and cultural amenities do we want that not only will benefit us, but those who come visit as well. We just this week started changing out all of our LED lights. We have adopted a new dark sky standard, which is a more warmer temperature. It's not as bright. And it is more welcoming and better for the dark skies, which is important in Tahoe. The Lake Link, we're investing in that. A few months ago, the City Council doubled down and said, hey, we're willing to continue to put $850,000 a year into this program, making sure we get other partners from the South Shore to contribute. And we're working close with SSTMA, South Shore Transportation Management Association, and stay tuned. I think there's a lot more momentum there. Traffic calming. We have a lot of neighborhoods that were just built with no traffic calming infrastructure. Just today, we put 6 speed bumps on Lakeview Avenue. Our public works director and I have gone out to meet with neighborhoods and actually put the infrastructure in that'll calm the traffic and create a safer environment for the residents who live there. Highlight, we hired a new fire chief, really just promoted him. If you don't know, Jim Drennan, he's an amazing chief. I told him I was gonna embarrass him in this presentation, but that was our big hire in the last year, and he's a joy to work with, and we're lucky to have him as a community leader, and he's working with the partnership and Lake Valley and other districts to make the fire service and defensible space better. And then this balancing scale here. Something that I think the city should really be proud of is we run the airport, and it is an enterprise fund. It's paid for and managed by FAA monies and user fees, and for the longest time ever, it was being subsidized by the general fund. And the city council embarked on a rate study. We've raised the rates. The hangars are still 100% occupied, and we're closed that general fund funding gap that's needed to make it self-sufficient. So that's a good thing, because that means we have more general fund money for roads and park improvements, which is what our community wants. Next slide, please. So this is Snowmageddon. We all went through it, but my message here is that storm events and weather events are here. They're going to get strong. They're going to get stronger. They're normal and they're constant, and we need to invest in core services. So we recently purchased $3.5 million of snowplow equipment, 4 new graders, 2 blowers. This is a concern. I've been here 3 years as the city manager. Every year we've activated our emergency operations center. Things are changing in our environment and causing us to be more resilient and ready to respond to natural disasters. So we're investing in the infrastructure, we're training our staff. The rain on snow events is something that's real, and that caused a lot of concern this year with a lot of roof snow load and saturation from rain. So we all need to focus on that and make sure we invest in better facility maintenance and equipment to maintain the snow. Next slide, please. Pothole-mageddon. These are a guarantee, Miss Laine. But they're free, right?
They're free.
Again, investment is a must. Last night, the city council heard a revised pavement condition index report from our engineering staff. It was amazing. And our strategy is to take care of the worst roads first. In 2020, the city voters passed Measure S, which generates about $7 million of money for us. And this year, we're investing $6 million of road rehabilitation, which is the most ever. And credit goes to the city council for staying committed to that investment and just making it a priority. Roads and stormwater are those things no one sees, but we need to fix them because it keeps Big Blue out there so beautiful. Next slide, please. The bottom line with this slide is that the philosophy at our administrative level is that leadership exists at all levels at our organization. I believe that our frontline maintenance technicians have more knowledge and the more ability to make decisions in the field. And so we're creating a culture of change and asking why and promoting leaders from within the organization to grow and give them opportunity to have that autonomy to do their job right. And everyone knows that we're here for public service. We're not gonna retire very, 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 very rich, but we love what we do because we're driven to the mission, and public service is what keeps us going. Next slide. All right, I'm almost there. Strategic plan, priorities, and projects. Some of the things we're working on is the final steps of a $5 million communication system upgrades, which improves communication with our public works, fire, and police departments. The Lake Link investment I talked about. Housing, we've rewritten our tiny homes code, ADU codes. We're building the Sugar Pine Village project. The city invested $1.8 million to leverage $100 million, and their construction will be starting this summer. The staging of the units will be brought to town. So that's 260 total units. That's much needed housing. Our philosophy on housing is that we need a wide range of housing. We need to make sure we have income restricted housing, workforce housing, starter home purchase, a ladder, if you will. The whole range creates a healthy community. The Multi-Generational and Recreation Center, right here at the corner, across from Lakeview Commons. We finished phase 1 construction last year. That was underground infrastructure. We just went out to bid yesterday for phase 2. We anticipate bringing a contract to City Council on August 8th to award phase 2, which is the vertical construction. So last year we hit pause. The bidding environment was not the best. We got not the best proposals. We did revised our code, created a new pre-qualification process, and I think we're going to be more competitive this round and get some really competitive bids. So keep your fingers crossed, because that's a great community asset on the South Shore that will benefit everyone. All right, next slide. And if you want to stay engaged, we have Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. We have a monthly newsletter that's issued, written by the city manager's office. We do a monthly event with the mayor. We sometimes host our events on Facebook Live. City council meetings are on our computer, channel 21. We're all here, and we're here to provide service for you, and we're happy to do it in partnership with all of our amazing partners here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Well done. Next up is our TRPA Governing Board representative, Placer County Supervisor Cindy Gustafson, and she's been the chair of the board since last year, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Cindy is here representing TRPA this evening. Welcome.
Hey. Thank you all, and thanks to the Chamber for having me. First off, I want to express Julie Reagan's regrets that she's not here. Obviously delivering this message. She asked if I would stand in, and since I'm just across the pond a little ways, I said I would be happy to drive down and stand in for her. So a lot of information to share tonight from TRPA, but I first wanted to start out talking a little bit, for those of you who don't know me, on the South Shore. I've lived in the Tahoe Basin 40 years. This May 1, I moved in of 1983. So I've seen a few storms, seen a few winters. I mean, this was a heck of a winter, right? Not one we want to repeat anytime soon, I think, and brought a lot of challenges to our community. But I've been really blessed in that time to spend 27 years of my career at Tahoe City Public Utility District. I also had the opportunity to work at the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association for a couple of years. And then my predecessor on the board resigned, and so I was able to jump in. And the Board of Supervisors, after many years of my working with them and being the loudmouth from North Shore, put me on the board. So thankfully, I really enjoyed the job, but just like Supervisor Laine, I spent a lot of time commuting to Auburn and back to do the work of the county as well as representing my community. A little bit about our board. So I was trying, and thanks, Jeff gave me the data on this. We have currently 14 board members. We should have 15. We have one vacancy right now when Bill Yates left at the end of the year. We're still hoping to get that appointment moving forward to get that seat filled for the California side. But of our board members, only 3 have been on the board more than 4 years. All the rest of us, me included, are newbies. And so staff is constantly needing to train us. But I think with that brings, while many of us have been a long time very involved in our communities, Supervisor Laine obviously brings a wealth of experience, Council Member Friedrich and myself as local representatives, as well as our other counterparts. We're bringing some new perspectives, I hope, to the agency of working together to serve our communities. And I find that the new board members, even those state representatives from both California and Nevada, are really willing to roll up their sleeves and work on the hard issues we have in front of us. So I think it's a good time, and obviously I'm honored, very honored to be serving as the chair. So I'm going to go through a bit of this presentation that I just, again, standing in for Julie, who is much more articulate and knowledgeable about all these topics. But we'll go to the first slide. Thank you. So celebrating, I believe it was last year, 50 years, or 2 years ago now. Yeah, 2 years ago, 50 years of this partnership of the two states coming together and establishing the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency to protect this incredible place that we all get to call home. The states signed that compact, and that began an era of a lot of things, hopefully mostly collaboration, but we've had some real challenges over those 50 years of working together with our business community, with our property owners, and making sure that we align with reinvestments in our community. That collaboration and partnership is critical, and I think I speak for all of our board members that we value all the partners that are working together to make this place continue to protect this lake and continue to thrive. So we can go to the next slide. In our strategic priorities update, our board just met, 2 weeks ago for a 2-day retreat, and again looked at our strategic priorities and our focus areas and reaffirmed obviously our affordable housing initiatives, transportation action plans, restoration and resiliency, and destination stewardship. And so I'm going to go through each of those real quickly now, so we can go to the next slide on the Tahoe Living Working Group. So we the agency formed the Tahoe Living Working Group actually before I was on the board, and Supervisor Laine were on the board. We're now on that committee as well. And starting out with that pressing issue that we're all facing. The agency's role is a little different than the local agency roles that we play, but understanding that that marketplace surge that we've all seen is really impacting groups disproportionately, and especially our local communities. So the local working group brought together local planners, housing experts, and expanded a lot of our discussions on what could we do to address housing. It's vital to all of us. It's vital to the services we provide in local government, regional government, but more importantly to our business communities and your ability to provide service. So we expanded accessory dwelling units to every parcel on the California side of the basin, and we're bringing forward amendments this year, and we're discussing these right now in our upcoming meetings on increased height, density, land coverage, and looking for deed-restricted multi-family projects near our town centers to really help incentivize employee housing and workforce housing. With the caps that we have in place, these we're looking very intentionally at how we can make sure that every project we support is meeting all of the criteria that we get to the triple bottom line, making improvements in the environment, the economy, and the community so that we all win. You know, the median, I don't need to tell you all this, but the median cost of a home has tripled in the last 10 years. And as we look at the regional plan as a growth management story map to understanding the 2012 regional plan update, how the intention of that was to get our town centers mitigating the 72% of sediment that is impacting the lake. And we haven't seen as much investment in those town centers as we'd like to see. So what else can we do to work on those issues? On a next slide, on the affordable housing solutions. So you are all more familiar than I am even with some of the projects here at South Lake Tahoe, but the 248-unit Sugar Pine Village is really a landmark that the city and we support, and the county, and then TRPA supported those efforts. And looking at how collaboration includes those nonprofits and how critical they are. Also looking at the Lake Tahoe Community College project that we were able to expedite to get the units built there for our students living in our communities, and helping get public assistance programs to sustain those efforts. We need to do more. There is no end in sight, and we probably can't build our way out of the needs that we have. We're really going to need to unlock and come up with more creative and innovative ways. And we as an agency stand ready to support our local agencies, and working together, we share in many of our discussions, but what we're learning from in our best practices and how to help each other get there. Next slide. Keeping Tahoe moving, and that was especially challenging this winter, and looking at how we could move through the snow, around the snow, through the snow, was really challenging. But we just awarded $11.1 million in regional grants to projects, about $7.8 million of that going to projects happening right here on South Shore. So really happy with those funds. Extending sidewalks on Apache Avenue and Myers, the El Dorado County Roundabout, pedestrian crossings in Myers at Pioneer Trail and US Highway 50, Phase 2 of Pioneer Trail pedestrian improvements and lighting in the city of South Lake Tahoe, helping electrify the Lake Link system with an EV charging station, and helping continue the free-to-the-user transit system that has been fare-free in the community just at the onset of the pandemic. You can go to the next slide. So as you may have noticed, the grant sources that we're able to bring to projects is helpful, but we need all of the regional transportation plan dollars to add additional funding to deal with the peak days, and especially those areas around our peak recreation areas. So since 2008, 48 transportation improvement projects have been completed in the basin at a cost of about $323 million, and that's combining funding from the federal, state, local, and private sectors. So we don't do this alone. We just work with all of you to make these things happen. The remaining projects in the ground, we know there's a shortfall of about $20 million. We talked about this a lot in Sacramento on Tuesday. The private share is there. We came up with a strategy of a 7-7-7 plan, 7 million local and private, local governments and private sector together, 7 million from the federal government, and then the 2 states splitting the other 7 million. With that, we've secured the local and private shares, and we're actually surpassing that goal. So I'm so proud of our local agencies and our business community that have stepped up and doing things like the micromass transit, funding those programs and continuing to move forward. We hope to see a lot more support for those systems. The users are loving those both on South Shore and on North Shore. We know ridership is expanding because of those, and how we tie those into our mainline bus services and make those more expedited is critical. But we do need to address those peak areas like Emerald Bay, and that is a big challenge. We're looking at satellite parking areas, 15-minute transit service, app-based parking reservation systems, travel information, and trying to limit the roadside parking. So all of these things are covered in our regional transportation plan. We just need to secure the funding I was talking about, the $20 million a year, 7, 7, and 7, to make these things be a reality for us. And we will continue as an agency to try to lead the way in coordinating the legislative advocacy to get us there. You can move to the next slide on restoration and resiliency. Many of the climate adaptations are embedded in our environmental improvement program. That's why we've done it for all these years. We established that project list that said, here are the priorities of how we protect this lake. And we know climate change is all around us now. And as we see the storms getting worse, the droughts, the wildfire, and now the snowmageddons, we understand we've got to adapt and make sure that every one of those EIP projects is moving in that direction to address climate change. And we need to, and I want to take a moment right now to just thank all the first responders, plow drivers, bus drivers, the hard-working staff that kept things open and got us through this last winter, and actually last year's winter. If you don't remember last year's winter, that was not quite as bad as this one, but we had that one big storm right at Christmas, New Year's that really shut down many areas around the lake. Incredible efforts on everybody's part. So as we look at the multi-agency climate resilience action strategy, it really will be guiding us to how we work together for the marsh restoration, the Taylor to Lac marsh restoration, the upper Truckee River marsh, you knew that what I was talking about, Taylor to Lac marsh restoration, and looking at the Washoe tribe who's interested in returning to some traditional ecological practices in Meeks Bay to make that project really move forward. We know carbon capture and marshes are critical to capturing that carbon. Move on to the next slide is aquatic invasive species. We have been, as an agency, the leader in this area, coordinating with our science partners and serving the partnerships in ways that I think are starting to lead the nation in how we're protecting this lake. The investments that we've made, over 107,000 vessels have been inspected since the inception of this program in 2008, and there have been no new aquatic invasive species detected since that time. We've had 14 projects that have been completed and 206 acres treated for AIS lake-wide. Taylor to Lac Marsh Restoration Project being key between TRPA, the Forest Service, and that's the largest single project that we've done. And of course, working with the Tahoe Keys to continue to move forward. They are hosting an online webinar tomorrow night, and you can register for that if you're interested in hearing their efforts. And this summer, divers will be revisiting the Emerald Bay area to ensure the treatment has stayed clear from the treatments we've done that we cleared in 2012. Then we'll move on to the Caldor fire and wildfire real quick. Similar to the severities of the winter, wildfires have been really impactful, and obviously not only the Caldor fire with its near miss here and the evacuations, but the smoke that we've all been learning to or having to live with, and the impacts that's had not only on our health and well-being and on the lake's clarity, but on our business communities. As I look at those impacts have been very significant. And we are so pleased that the years of investment that we've put into treating our forest after Angora, we learned and we were ahead of the game. We were investing in those, and they worked. And I was able to go out firsthand with our fire chief from North Shore, brought me down to watch and see the firefighters saving Christmas Valley and really putting out those embers as they hit the ground. It was really an amazing sight, but they had the space and they had the ability to do that. The Tahoe Resource Conservation District has recognized we now have 26 nationally recognized Firewise USA sites in the basin, and that's grown to 65 neighborhoods in our community. So we're very proud of that and those efforts. Going on to the next slide, on our resilient forest, we are working with the Tahoe Forest and Fuels teams following that Angora fire, as I mentioned, and we've helped secure $171 million in federal and state funding over the last 12 years and treated more than 70,000 acres in the basin since the Angora fire. You can move on to the next slide. And then looking at science, the agency has a broad range of partnerships with science, as well as our Tahoe Science Advisory Council, but also our own science experts in the agency that really are studying the clarity issues and looking at those impacts and making sure that we study and understand those issues. We have surpassed the initial targets of more than 500,000 pounds of pollutants being kept out of the lake every year, but we're continuing to look at what's happening now with smoke. And what is that leading into the lake? Because obviously those deposits are hitting our lake. So Tahoe Science Advisory Council is engaged on all these fronts. They're studying algae and microplastics as well in the basin. We're all aware that those are all issues facing many of our waterways and our planet because of issues we didn't understand before now. And then moving on to the next slide, looking at destination stewardship. This is an unprecedented collaboration with our tourism partners as well as our agencies. I'm not sure how many are in there on that list, but quite, 50 or 60 partners working on this to really looking at how we can educate our visitors and how we can look at sustainable tourism. We know it's the lifeblood of our communities. We know we are not going to stop people from coming here, but how can they travel and get here and enjoy this place without impacting us and impacting the quality of that lake? So we're looking at launching the strategies on June 2nd. And that's expanding the support for the Take Care ambassadors that we've had at popular recreation sites, expanding the microtransit, and moving transportation projects forward, managing litter that we've been doing, creating a culture here of caring about the lake. And then finally, we'll go to upcoming coffee talk. So Julie's not here tonight, but she wanted me to make sure you can meet with her. Is it next Thursday, the 25th? Jeff, where is that going to be?
State line offices.
At our state line offices. Stop in and talk with the agency and talk with Julie. We're going to reinstitute coffee talks. Both on South Shore and North Shore, so that people can really come and talk about the critical issues facing this basin and have face-to-face time with us. There's a lot of coming back together after COVID kind of tore us all apart and created a lot of divisiveness. It's time to come back together and start working closely and listening to each other, and we hope you'll join us in that. We're here to listen to you. We also want to impart and hear from you what your ideas are, but also impart some of what we're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Very good. Next up, Shelly Thomsen from South Tahoe PUD. We're honored to have the PUD here. This is their first time appearing on this program. Lots of stuff going on at the district, and Shelly, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening. I'm Shelly Thomsen. I'm the Director of Public and Legislative Affairs for South Tahoe Public Utility District, saving the most exciting parts of water and wastewater for last. Tonight I'll provide a little bit of overview of what we do and some of the highlights from the last year. Next slide. So we're a public utility district, so we supply drinking water and provide wastewater collection, treatment, and export to protect Lake Tahoe. We're community-owned and governed by a publicly elected board. So providing water and wastewater in the mountains proves to be challenging and requires lots of infrastructure. So as such, we have a $50 million annual budget, and we're working on a 10-year capital improvement program at a cost of around $200 million. So Tahoe is special, and to keep it that way, we have a 115-person staff that works around the clock in crazy weather during holidays to make sure that when you turn on the faucet, you get delicious Tahoe tap, and when you flush the toilet, you don't have to think about it again. Next slide. So let's talk about water. We provide drinking water to 85% of the South Shore. It's all sourced from groundwater. To do this, we pump water from 13 wells around town. Water flows through 250 miles of water mains under those potholy streets to reach our more than 14,000 water customers. Because of our mountainous topography, we have 16 booster stations that lift the water to the top of neighborhoods. For reference, San Francisco has 9? booster stations. So half the amount to serve a bajillion times more people. We also have 19 storage tanks that are located at the top of the hills and the mountains, and that's to make sure that we can supply water to meet peak demands and to fight fire. That is an aggressive bug. So living at the top of the watershed, we're really fortunate to have clean and abundant drinking water. When we leave the hill and go to my parents' house in Orange County or visit friends in the Sacramento Delta, my kids complain about the taste of water. And I'm really biased, but I think there's nothing better than Tahoe Tap. Next slide. So, unlike much of California, the challenge with our water system isn't water quality or water quantity. Tahoe's biggest water challenge is old and undersized pipes. So most of our system was built to support summer cabins, and it was built with these 2-inch water mains underneath the street. And you can't fight fire with a garden hose. So we've been investing in upsizing our water mains from 2 inches to 8 inches and installing fire hydrants. And we learned during the Caldor fire that investments in fuels management in the forest, but also investments in upsizing water lines and having hydrants is critical to protecting our community from wildfire. So we continue to upsize water mains, and it's not cheap. It costs around $2 million per mile to do that work. Last year, you might have seen us in the Bijou neighborhood where we were replacing water lines. This summer, we're gonna be out in the Black Bart neighborhood, and we plan to continue replacing 2 to 3 miles of water lines per year. Next slide. So every toilet that flushes on the South Shore on the California side from Emerald Bay to State Line and all the way out to Christmas Valley comes to our wastewater treatment plant in the heart of town. So wastewater flows by gravity through these 300 miles of sewer mains to one of our 41 pump stations. So pump stations are located at the low point in our town, close to meadows, streams, creeks, and they lift the wastewater up so it continue flowing by gravity to our wastewater treatment plant. So we clean about 3.5 million gallons per day, and we pump that recycled water up and over Luther Pass to Alpine County, where it's used by farmers for irrigation. Next slide. So when Steve told me to think about this last year, wow, all I could think about was the winter. So while big snow years can be really challenging with power outages and endless snow removal, it's really those rain on snow events that impact our sewer facilities. So in March, the Upper Truckee Marsh flooded, and our Bellevue station is located right there along the meadow. It was under multiple feet of water. So we saw flows through that pump station increase tenfold. Essentially, our pump station was helping drain the meadow, which may or may not be a good thing. The challenge is it was on the verge of spilling sewage into that meadow, which is right next to the lake. So when things get tough, Team Tahoe really comes together. We worked with the California Tahoe Conservancy, who manages the meadow, with CAL FIRE, who was leading the charge in the EOC, with the Lahontan Regional Quality Control Board, with TRPA, and with Northwest Hydraulics and working together to try to figure out how to prevent this sewage spill quickly and get that meadow down. We identified that clearing a channel that connects the marsh to the lake was the best option. So we dug a 3-foot deep channel where the marsh had breached back in our last huge winter of 2017, and thankfully avoided a spill. So we've identified and continue to install solutions to try to reduce future stormwater flows into our wastewater system. While this winter was a big one, we know it's not the last big one. While rain on snow is becoming more common, we need to prepare for it. Next slide. So this was the winter that just kept giving, and on the other side of town, we were experiencing other issues. So an avalanche at Fallen Leaf Lake took out the power lines as well as our backup generator building that feeds 3 of our sewer pump stations. So sewer is all about redundancy, right? If the power goes out, we need to keep operating. But when an avalanche takes out the power and our backup power, we had to get creative. So our crews brought in mobile generators and refueled these generators as well as pumped out the stations daily to prevent a sewer spill. We're working with FEMA to get reimbursed for all storm-related damage expenses. And a big thank you to Supervisor Laine, who was ringing the bell to form the Emergency Operations Center to get it going before that storm hit. And we worked really closely with Incident Command to have a lot of support through that emergency. Next slide. So South Tahoe PUD is one of only a handful of wastewater agencies in the world that can claim 100% reuse for both recycled water and biosolids. So we send our biosolids, better known as treated poop, to Bentley Agrodynamics in Minden, Nevada, where they produce fertilizer for agricultural use. We all know that Tahoe is special, but it's extra special when it comes to wastewater. The Port of Cologne Act of '69 requires that all recycled water in the entire basin be pumped up and out of the basin. So we pump our recycled water 26 miles up and over Luther Pass to Alpine County, where it's stored in Harvey Place Reservoir. And then in the summer months, we release water from that reservoir to be used for agricultural irrigation. Water is really heavy. Pumping water takes a lot of energy. We are Liberty Utilities' largest customer. So to help offset our energy demands, the district installed hydroelectric turbines on the downhill side of that pipe from the top of Luther Pass into Alpine County to produce 56 kilowatts of renewable energy. This summer, we plan to install a 1 megawatt solar facility at our wastewater treatment plant that will offset a third of the power used at the wastewater treatment plant. Next slide. So our complex water, sewer, and recycled water systems require ongoing maintenance, replacements, improvements. Our board of directors is meeting tomorrow during our board meeting to vote on proposed increases that would fund the water and sewer pipeline replacement program and really help keep up with increasing construction, chemical, and utility costs. You can see a detailed list of all of our capital improvement projects that are planned over the next 10 years, as well as a breakdown of our rates on our website. Next slide, please. So at the district, we really believe in investing in our system today, and by doing that, we hope to lower long-term costs, protect the environment, and ensure reliable quality service. So as such, we're actively pursuing grants, and we've been really successful. We currently have 18 grants and loans open right now that are funding $42 million of projects. So those grants come from all over the place. Thanks to the city, they got American Recovery Act funds, and with those funds, we're installing more fire hydrants in the city. Thanks to the Forest Service, they've helped invest in upsizing water lines to protect our community from fire, not just in South Lake, but around the basin through the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act. The California Tahoe Conservancy has been instrumental in funding fuels reduction work, especially on the 100 acres around our wastewater treatment plant, as well as lots of other funding partners. Cindy mentioned that yesterday we were down in Sacramento. When I say we, I really mean everyone at this table. We partner with the other public utility districts, with the other water agencies, the city, the county, and our nonprofits as well, the League to Save Lake Tahoe, Tahoe Fund, to work with our state and federal delegation to help bring in federal and state funding into the basin. So with that, that is my last one. Thank you. And I'm sure there will be lots of wastewater questions that I'm here for.
Thank you, Shelly. So once again, invite anyone in the audience to fill out a question in the back. I have a couple here to start with to get us all warmed up. And also wanted to recognize Dr. Todd Cutler here from Lake Tahoe Unified School District. I want to have the school district on a future State of the South Shore program. So I want to start with the city manager. Cindy talked about, from the TRPA perspective, working with the local government partners, the whole idea of area plans that came out of the 2012 regional plan update, and the density and the transit services and the housing, in those areas. And the city has embarked upon a pretty aggressive program that was part of the discussion last night about how do we amend the tourist core area plan to bring it up to some state standards and some other things that the council as a policy driver wants to look at. How do we amend the Tahoe Valley area plan? And then I know that the city has a work plan to do an area plan where there currently is community plans in Midtown. That's a pretty aggressive approach, and I know it's not going to all happen in a year, but could you comment a little bit about that part of the city's work plan?
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. The area plans are a really vital tool for us to create more predictability for developers and people who want to invest in making our community better, who are coming to town to build housing for our residents. The conversation last night circled around what kind of density minimums and maximums should we have for housing? Should there be limits or not for affordable deed-restricted housing? The conversation also involved around the use of land. Do we need seas of parking lots where they're vacant and empty often? What kind of strategy should we put in place to manage what parking requirements exist? Is it a minimum structure or a maximum structure? And those kinds of things build more predictability, and it builds better alignment with the regional plan and allows us to be more streamlined with investment that is proposed to happen in the city limits.
Well, I know that you brought on at least one additional planner to help with all of this, and also you might want to mention your new Parks and Rec director.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, you're right. It's been a while since the city has amended or adopted the area plans. It is aggressive, the tourist core area plan, the Tahoe Valley. We have two amazing assistant planners that are leading those under the guidance of our Director of Development Services, Hillary Roverud, who's been here forever and knows the ins and outs of the system that we plan and manage growth under. The Midtown plan, I was remiss to talk about that. That feeds into the Parks and Recreation Director, because Midtown is the 56-acre site. It's the college, it's Johnson Boulevard, it's our police station, it's a big area of land. There's large land, pieces of land there that could accommodate new affordable housing projects. But what we're tying into that as well is parks master planning efforts for the Bijou Park, which is one of our biggest acreage parks. And John Stark just started on Monday. He's our new Parks and Recreation Director. He's a breath of fresh air and excited to roll his sleeves up and really see how we can take Parks and Recreation to the next level. But I think that planning effort is a part of that too. So we make sure we connect the trail network, the Dennis T. Machado Trail that goes through that area. It's such a spine that connects to neighborhoods and could help to make connectivity and bike and ped travel a desirable experience rather than what I used to do 23 years ago walking along US 50 with no sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So there's a flip side to the importance of density and trying to do housing, and I know that the TRPA governing board has been hearing a lot of public comment on some of the projects that you've been approving. What's this density, and why do we need this height, and why do we need, these buildings that a lot of people, some people consider to be urban, and this is a rural area, it's a resort area. So I know the agency discussed that as a governing board and management staff at your retreat, And what are some of the observations you make, particularly as the chair who has to facilitate these discussions?
Well, boy, put me on the spot here. I think that the whole concept of the 2012 regional plan was to reinvest in our town centers. There's no doubt that we want reinvestment. That's where I think it's 72% of the sediments are entering the lake are coming from those areas that have not yet been updated with BMPs and other treatments because we didn't have the ability to go taller in a lot of our areas or to create density. The other thing is everybody wants everyone to use transit, everyone else, right? And especially those of us who live and work and have to run a bunch of errands, sometimes transit isn't the best, easiest thing for us to use. But micromass transit's working pretty darn good. But to get transit to be effective and transportation solutions, they need density. They need areas in which they can pick up a lot of people, get them from one spot to another spot. So we can't have it both ways. If we really want to make strides in transportation, we need land use that will help feed that. We see it as a governing board. Some of our new members have a lot of experience outside the basin, and especially as it relates to housing. And when we look at workforce housing and know that we need to create it, it has to be financially feasible. And that means using less land, solidifying that into a more dense area, and allowing those individuals to not need a car here and not need a parking space and be able to move forward. So I think the board in large part understands that. The magic in all of this is finding that balance of what will help us achieve what we're looking for, both in transportation and housing.
Appreciate the response.
I didn't really have a solid answer
Oh, yes.
other than we're working on it.
Well, but you know, the connection that you made between the density and the transit efficiency is really key.
Yep.
And so I think that's an important point that sometimes people forget. They just see something bigger and they don't think it belongs to Tahoe, but there's a strategy here that we're pursuing. So, Brooke, every local jurisdiction is on the point of the spear when it comes to VHRs, and certainly El Dorado County is no exception. Talk about balance. There's a balance between the revenues generated by VHR, the TOT, and then, you know, more people. The county over the last couple of years has opened up TOT revenues to, you know, mitigate the responses that are necessary by first responders and others. So on the one hand, we're spending more TOT for more folks, but we're also looking at the challenge of VHRs and that as a TOT revenue driver. How do you balance those issues?
Well, here in the basin, we generate about 67% of all the TOT money that is collected by the county. The other 33% roughly comes from the West Slope. And as you know, historically, the county has always seen those revenues as general fund dollars that can be used however they want to use it. And they have built up rather, I think it's fair to say, a dependency on those dollars. I give kudos to my predecessor, Supervisor Novosel. She came up with this concept of impacts on tourism, and they started utilizing that idea a couple years ago, which is what you were referring to with first responders. So now we make that money available based on the impact that tourism creates on your agency or your community, and we try to give back money directly to support that. That's a better concept than the way they were using it, which is, from our perception up here in the basin, was we sent 2/3 of all the TOT money, about $6.7 million, down to the county, and we never saw any of it come back. So this has at least evened it up a little bit. This last year, for the 67% that we sent down to the county, we got back 75%. So I think that concept is working. With regards to code enforcement or the lack thereof, I personally believe that some of those transient occupancy tax dollars should be used to support code enforcement and put back into that program so that we can start dealing with the impacts of vacation home rentals in our residential neighborhoods. The other thing I'm hoping will come out of this community advisory group is if we could put the horse back in the barn, and we could now talk about what would that look like in our community, what would that look like? So these are some outcomes that I'm hoping that we'll start diving into. I know we can't put the horse back in the barn, but it's fun to dream.
Thank you, Brooke. So all of our employers up here, including our public agencies, have a challenge with maintaining staff. The cost of housing, a competitive workplace where sometimes we're not able to match a salary that somebody could get, elsewhere. We have a great talent pool, but it's not a given. And not to single out anybody, but it's at management level as well as line worker level. And so the district is about to undergo a change in general manager. John Teal is leaving, and what is the succession planning there? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, so our general manager, John Teal, has been with the district for 31 years. He's been general manager the last 4.5 years, and is leaving for warmer temperature. Good for him. So that's a really exciting time. A change is exciting and a little scary in our community. In terms of recruiting, the district has a really strong program for employees in-house to cross-train for positions. Something that Joe mentioned earlier was, investing in employees so they can promote from within. That's really helpful. It's easier to attract and maintain someone who lives in Tahoe. But a general manager position is a big role to fill. So we've hired a recruiter, and we'll be recruiting nationally based on the direction of our board members. I think we'll have really strong internal candidates and hopefully really strong external candidates to make it a tough job.